First and foremost, it's a true honor to gather with you today in this setting. Such a rich history, helping advance the conversation on veteran health and well-being. Secretary Santiago, General Smith, General Hammond, Mr. Patterson, Dr. Wortham, thank you for your comments. Thank you for your leadership. It's a great day. Now, there is a saying that history gives answers only to those who know how to ask questions. So in that vein, for this group of thought disruptors gathered here today, how do we equip the mind and the body of our veterans to flourish in the next chapter of their lives? As some say, while the battlefield changes, the mission continues for our veterans. Because we're all in this room talking about challenges that have stubbornly persisted over time, new ways of thinking about the problem will most likely be needed. Secretary Santiago, General Hammond said as much. So, some questions. Do you believe that innovation is making something new? Or is it about changing the existing order of things? And we know in our dynamic world that change is not optional. So are we who are gathered here today driving change, or are we reacting to it? And if we know that the future is not going to be found by reproducing the past, and that innovation rarely proceeds in a straight line, then what gets in the way of people thinking beyond what they can see? I think these are critical questions to ask, not just to identify the what to do, but more so how to do it, how to implement a successful strategy. The what oftentimes caters to the action bias, while I believe the how, system-based leadership. Now, I love this 5 Stages of No by General C.Q. Brown. It shows that there is a perspective process to seeing beyond what we know and embracing the new now, and in this case, the next mission. So here's a for instance for the clinicians in the room. How many of you use Zoom, FaceTime, WhatsApp for clinical care prior to COVID? And if you actually wanted to do it, you brought it up to your supervisors or your leadership, what would they have said? Hell no. So now we're at stage 5, and telehealth is woven into the normal business practices, right? So the question I have is, when we think of veteran problem sets, are institutional or legacy processes impeding progress for you in the veteran space? Okay. For those in the room who are familiar with SOF, that's Special Operations Forces, then you're familiar with the first soft truth. According to SOCOM, that's Special Operations Command, individuals, not equipment, are the decisive factor in mission success. These are highly skilled personnel operating cohesively as a team who possess the ability to achieve objectives regardless of the resources at hand, or in simpler terms, even the most advanced equipment cannot substitute for the absence of capable individuals. Capable individuals, people. The SOF community's strength is inseparable from its fragility. As clinicians, as researchers, as scientists, we all bear an awesome responsibility to safeguard these men and women who, as George Orwell said, stand ready to do violence on our behalf while our families sleep peacefully in their beds. Being the world's premier SOF force is extraordinary. It is not ordinary. So there is a heavy lift involved to preserve it, just as there is there with any meaningful pursuit in life. In a dynamic world of uncertainty, what keeps our SOF community at the top is a lethal agility. SOF adjusts its tools, its tactics, its procedures to meet the emerging threats, which means a fixed or a passive posture on our part threatens the quality of our contribution to an evolving, multi-generational force preservation effort. Our GWAT operators, that's our Global War and Terrorism operators, are now more regularly joining the veterans' ranks, and a new generation of operator is replacing them. In short, What got us a seat at the table should not keep us there. We need to be honest brokers, thought leaders who make adjustments to keep our force capable and agile while preserving and extending the good health of our veterans who have already stood the watch. Taking a page from Albert Einstein, we need to aspire to not become a person of success, but rather a person of value when it comes to our veterans. There is a division of labor here in this room that demands humility. We are all guardians of those people who protect and have protected our families and our freedom. The nation has a stake in keeping the balance between soft strength and its fragility in our favor. This is a priority challenge, and the modern warrior's challenge reflects a unique physical, psychological, and moral demands faced by today's service members and veterans. Modern warfare presents a complex blend of traditional and asymmetric threats that challenge not only survival on the battlefield, but also long-term health, resiliency, and identity. The very nature of combat is to change and to evolve past the enemy. The signature mechanism of injury during the GWOT was the IED, the improvised explosive device. The IED was a cruel discriminator from previous conflicts that significantly aggravated the repeated combat exposures of our soft operators in Afghanistan and Iraq. Last night, I returned from Ukraine, where I witnessed firsthand how the relentless drone attacks are complicating the human toll. Let me be clear, the challenges we face today will sadly be more complex in the future for the warriors who protect us. Getting things right today matters. We know from the data how persistent exposure to unpredictable violence and hostility can negatively impact the mind and the body. When paired with the moral ambiguity of combat, where lines between combatants and civilians get blurred and complex rules of engagement exist, there tends to follow internal conflict and fodder for moral injury that can torment one's soul. This is why mind, body, mission need to intersect and integrate. My colleagues, Dr. Sophia Mata and Dr. Kaylo Tanev, will dive deeper into the topic of spirituality and moral injury later today. 3 points. Point 1, the mind. To manage the psychological load of protracted conflict requires rewiring and resilience building. Combat stress rewires the brain, but healing can rewire it too. I'm encouraged by the emerging research and condensed protocols that increase access to care, brain plasticity research, reconsolidation therapy, and I am hopeful by the innovative efforts within the virtual, neuromodulation, and psychedelic domains. The take-home point, the same adaptability that keeps warfighters alive in combat can fuel post-traumatic growth in their post-service lives. Point 2, the body. Performance and physical recovery play an important role in mental health. We just heard this from Dr. Wortham. The soft operator requires physical agency for optimal health, which makes tackling chronic pain, optimizing sleep, bolstering self-regulation, and proper nutrition so important. I'm encouraged by the research into neuroinflammation, the gut-brain connection, and efforts to leverage biotechnology. The take-home point, treat the body like an operator treats its gear. Optimize it, maintain it, upgrade it for long-term mission success. Point 3, the mission. Purpose behind trauma starts with rebuilding identity and meaning. Transitioning from warfighter to warrior with purpose requires effort, and it takes a village. Transitioning from warfighter to warrior with purpose requires effort and takes a village. Community, mentorship, and continued service all have a role in perspective shifting one's mission and ridding veterans of a silent killer, isolation. Connection is critical. Take-home point, the mission doesn't end with transition, it evolves. The modern warrior's challenge is not just about survival, it's about maximizing their years of peak physical, cognitive, and emotional functioning. And to help our service members flourish, we need a collaborative, culturally competent model of warrior care that integrates innovative, evidence-based therapies with cutting-edge science, human connection to create capacity for post-traumatic growth. The next mission needs to shift from short-term recovery to long-term optimization. And the bottom line up front, I believe a health span approach that General Hammond talked about is essential. A little bit of a history lesson to go back and understand my point. While I was in uniform, there were 3 paradigm shifts in military medicine. And one of them came in 2010. Prior to 2010, and keep in mind we went to war in the global war on terrorism in 2001. So prior to 2010, the PCP, specialist referral-based model of care, dominated military health. You know what this is. This is your primary care manager, refers you to a specialist, and at some point in time, you see the specialist. Feedback gets back to your primary care manager with potentially subsequent referrals happening to refine the diagnosis or address the related issue, and so on and so forth until you get resolution. But when your force is at war and you have a high up tempo, that doesn't work very well, and it didn't, reliably so. So in 2010, when the National Center of Excellence, NICO, came online and introduced a new interdisciplinary model of care, it was a big thing. Now active duty personnel could be seen iteratively by a multidisciplinary staff over a designated amount of time that replaced specialist silos with cross-functional teams for a more efficient, comprehensive assessment. The creation of NICO in 2010 by military medicine was a necessity in response to the ID threat. This innovative model of care gave way to 13 intrepid spirits around the country for our active duty and was a catalyst for related research and advancing the VA towards its current 5-site TBI, intensive evaluation and treatment program concept. Now that sounds like a lot, but it's not. So in 2018, when Naval Special Warfare came up to Boston to establish a collaboration with home base, it was because it needed more capacity. Now today, the wait list for some of the SOP for the COMBAT, Comprehensive Brain Health and Trauma program, is between 12 and 15 months long. And if you build it, they will come, and we need to keep building. In 2010, NICO changed this model of care, the model of TBI care. Today, 2025, post-GWAT, we are armed with 2 decades of hard lessons learned about how the brain injuries can trigger underlying dysfunctions that extend well beyond the brain and how a complex mixture of exposures can interplay. As Dr. Ross Savant, one of our founders here at Home Base and the principal investigator for the NFL and concussion, stated, there is a growing recognition that many systems interact to produce multi-level dysfunction after TBI with a series of nuanced comorbidities. Given this complexity, we must maintain a broad perspective but a vigilant focus when considering the health span of our military personnel. The take-home point is that once again, there is a paradigm shift happening in brain health evaluation and how we approach treatment. The paradigm shift occurring within soft brain health evaluation has replaced TBI at the forefront of the diagnostic gateway with an exposures-based model. You heard General Hammond speak of that. TBI isn't simply a complex condition often underdiagnosed and misunderstood. It is one among many multifactorial exposures, including environmental toxins, chronic stress, and so on, that must be considered within a complex, interrelated system. Brain injuries can trigger underlying dysfunctions that extend well beyond the brain, affecting the endocrine system, our sleep architecture, and other life-altering issues. Now, when we recognize that our operators have experienced multiple exposures beyond and related to TBI, it becomes clear that the definition of life-altering issues, when looked through a complex comorbidity lens, may create concern for cardiovascular conditions, autoimmune disorders, heightened cancer risk, neurodegenerative diseases, all that can threaten the operator's long-term well-being. This underscores the critical need for broader access to integrated, multidisciplinary evaluations to properly assess and educate our operators on their health span. Health span is years of life free from chronic disease. To avoid biological age outpacing chronological age of our operators, we need an integrated evaluation that addresses exposures that threaten their well-being, along with an accompaniment of targeted interventions. The next mission has started. How we rethink resilience, treatment, post-traumatic growth. This will define the future of the force. We must move beyond just treating trauma to engineering resilience. This is the home-based Healthspan roadmap. The objective is to close the delta between lifespan and healthspan. And to do that, we need to be deliberate, we need to be agile, and we need to be comprehensive. On the top are exposures, on the bottom are interventions, and you have a holistic approach to the person. Operator healthspan evaluation has a broad perspective and a vigilant focus, just like Dr. Safat said. At home base, in response to pressing needs to address the unknown consequences of the toxic exposures threat outlined in the PAC Act, that's the Promise to Address Comprehensive Toxic Exposure Act, we've added cancer screening through the Mass General Cancer Early Detection and Diagnostic Clinic. That's a big thanks to Dr. Alicia Sequest. With the support of Dr. Antonio Salagowski, home base is collaborating with NEST, this is the neurocardiac effects of stress and trauma, on a soft cardiovascular evaluation. Home base has also joined forces with our SOCOM partners on advanced neuromodulation protocols and are spearheading a psychedelic-assisted therapy clinic with regional partners, amongst other endeavors. This is a rising tide lifts all ships approach where collaboration makes a difference. The home-based healthspan roadmap can also be reconceptualized as an epigenetic clock. Dr. Wortham talked about what epigenesis is. And this clock accounts for the allostatic load our operators face and the necessity of a healthspan approach to mitigate age acceleration. The objective is to slow down the clock, extending the health span of our operators. Healthspan is a collaborative, comprehensive force preservation strategy that extends throughout the lifespan of each and every military member and their family. The family is a critical point and part to be involved in throughout the process. This essential healthcare imperative today is to not only live longer, but age well. Dr. Dan Shavar will talk about this later today. This is a complex problem to solve. We can't be the smartest people in our own thought silos, and we can't rely on yesterday's thinking. Contemporary soft healthspan presents a significant challenge that necessitates strategic military-civilian partnerships with the nation's leading academic medical centers and benevolence organizations to meet the demand. Again, a strategic rising tide lifts all boats approach. It's a little bit biased from a Navy guy. And as we convene today, let us be a tactical pause to reassess the state of our guardianship for those who serve and who have served. Thank you for your time and attention, and thank you for what you do in service of the first soft truth.